BMW's 4 Series Gran Coupe offers a more flexibly stylish choice in the profitable sector for compact executive cars. For once, two rear doors don't compromise the visual appeal of a model of this kind, nor does their extra weight dilute the handling purity. Of course, there are more practical choices in this segment, and certainly cheaper ones. After trying this BMW though, you might not be quite so attracted to them. Our business car parks are full of cars owned by people who'd really rather be driving something else. In many cases, they'll have something practical with 5 doors, when what they'd really like is a smart sports coupe. Any brand with a product able to offer the best of both will have a successful sales proposition on its hands. The kind of thing, in fact, boasted by this model, BMW's 4 Series Gran Coupe. You might already be familiar with the kind of car this is, a coupe that also offers a set of conventional rear doors, while managing to stay relatively stylish and individual. Now, as long ago as 2008, Volkswagen arguably pioneered this idea in the mid-size class with their Passat CC, building on a concept Mercedes had already introduced in the larger executive segment back in 2005 with their CLS class. Of course, it didn't take long for other brands to notice and follow suit. Of these, Audi were the cleverest, deciding that if you wanted to create a practical car that looked and drove like a coupe, then the best thing to start with was a coupe, something like their A5. Reworking that car into a sensible 5-door hatch that was still rather smart can't have been easy, but the A5 Sportback model they introduced in 2010, as a result of that thinking, rewarded them by selling in such prodigious numbers that rivals BMW had to respond. Mind you, it took Munich until the middle of 2014 to properly do so and bring us this 4 Series Gran Coupe. They'd wanted to wait until the launch of their 4 Series model line in 2013 before doing an extended coupe version. But in the interim, the brand took the opportunity to test the concept with their larger 6 Series Gran Coupe, a variant that quickly accounted for over 60% of all 6 Series model sales. Important then for them to have a smaller 4 Series base version, even though BMW dealers could already offer 2 smart 5-door models to customers shopping in the compact executive market segment, namely the 3 Series Touring Estate and the 3 Series Gran Turismo 5-door hatch. Commentators like me wondered whether there was really room in the company's range for another similarly sized, similarly priced 5-door design sharing most of the same mechanicals and all of the same engines as these 2 existing models. The Bavarians, though, were determined to find out. They point out that a car bearing the 4 Series badge is a slightly more focused thing than one from the 3 Series range, and that free from the overriding shackles of practicality that must slightly compromise the style of 3 Series Touring or Gran Turismo models, this 4 Series Gran Coupe can be a much more stylish thing, and so at last properly challenge that Audi A5 Sportback model whose success it would clearly like to emulate. So, is that likely? Let's put this BMW to the test and find out. So, how does a 4 Series BMW with 5 doors differ from a 3 Series model with 5 doors? It's a fair question given the premium the Munich maker is asking for this Gran Coupe variant. Part of the answer comes with this car's sleeker look, and part with the thing that goes a long way towards creating that sleeker look, namely this 4 Series model's lower ride height. It comes courtesy of the wider front and rear track that slightly differentiates all 4 Series models, coupe, convertible and this Gran Coupe, from their 3 Series counterparts, hunkering them better down into the road and lowering the centre of gravity. So yes, adding 5 to 4 does indeed give you a slightly different answer to adding 5 to 3. Make sure you tell that to uninformed friends. A different answer, though, isn't necessarily a better one. Although a 5-door 4 Series rides on exactly the same wheelbase as a comparable 3 Series, it's longer and weighs around 70 kilograms more, model for model. In other words, if your benchmark is a 3, there are negatives as well as positives to the 4 Series approach, and broadly speaking, the two things tend to cancel each other out. At the end of the day, though, that's a pretty good result for the Munich maker's engineers, given that the last time they tried to put a higher hatchback body on 3 Series running gear, that was in creating the 3 Series Gran Turismo model, the dynamic purity of the car was significantly compromised in a way it simply hasn't been in this case. So far, so good then. Time to remind you of the basic winning formula here. Namely the front engine rear-wheel drive layout with its near perfect 50-50 weight distribution that continues to mark standard versions of this car out from their rivals. Super effective traction and stability systems keep those back wheels in check so that if you're not a driving enthusiast, you'll notice no difference. But if you are, then the feeling of being propelled up the road by the back wheels as you exit a bend never fails to offer up a great feeling of pleasure. It helps that the feedback from the tactile, pleasantly chunky 3-spoke sports steering wheel is far better than you fear an electric steering system might offer, and BMW claim you can improve this still further by specifying the variable sports steering option, which is supposed to offer more response the more lock you apply. Personally, I think the advantages this feature adds to be slight, but they do complement the way that this car is so good at delivering more the more you ask from it. Just how much more depends upon a number of factors, the first of which is your selection of modes from the standard drive performance control system, the rocker switch for which you'll find down here by the gear stick. Now, you might be familiar with this kind of thing by now, a setup that allows you to tweak the steering, throttle and stability control system thresholds depending on the operating mode you select. Gear change times too, if like many 4 Series buyers, you decide against the slick 6-speed stick shifter and order your car with this 8-speed auto transmission that can come with steering wheel paddles and a natty launch control system for would-be Alonsos. Ignore drive performance control or select its most relaxed, comfort or efficient Eco Pro settings, and the travelling experience in this car, though very comfortable, isn't especially memorable. Push the rocker switch forward into Sport though, and the reaction you get immediately feels keener and more alert. More like the kind of 4 Series enthusiasts would expect this car to be. To really create that kind of machine, though, you've to spend a bit of extra money, primarily on the adaptive M Sport suspension setup that's on the model I'm driving here, a system able to alter the ride to suit the road you're on and the mood you're in. It'll firm up nicely in Sport mode, and if you've a model with the additional Sport Plus setting, then you'll find that selecting this mode will relax the DSC stability control to give you a little more tail-out cornering leeway, if you should be that way inclined. If you are something of a tail-out tearaway, you'll probably want to avoid the X-Drive 4-wheel drive option that really comes into its own in the winter months, distributing as it can almost 100% of power to either axle or a mix between both front and rear, so keeping this car firmly planted through the tightest bends. You can choose it as an affordable option with very little performance or efficiency penalty on both of the entry-level 2-litre petrol or diesel models, the 420i and the 420d. With over 60% of buyers likely to favour a black pump BMW, I've chosen a 190 brake horsepower X-Drive 420d here, a car with nearly 30% more pulling power than its 184 brake horsepower 420i petrol-powered counterpart. Now, the most obvious stats don't immediately bear this out. Both cars make 62 miles an hour from rest in around 7.5 seconds on the way to a top speed of just under 150 miles an hour. But you really feel it out on the road, where the 420D develops a punchy 380 Newton meters of torque, delivery you can watch as you accelerate on a special display option you'll find within the infotainment screen menus. If performance isn't a crucial consideration in your choice of 4 Series Gran Coupe, then the 143 brake horsepower 418D diesel variant might well be sufficient. It does, after all, still make 62 miles an hour from rest in only a fraction over 9 seconds. Don't drive it though after a trip in one of the silky smooth 6-cylinder diesel models, either the 258 brake horsepower 430D, that's good for 62 miles an hour in 5.6 seconds, or the 313 brake horsepower 435D, which is nearly a second faster and offers xDrive four-wheel drive as standard. Both models must be artificially restrained at 155 miles an hour, as must the two properly quick mainstream petrol variants. First amongst these is the 245 brake horsepower 4-cylinder 428i, which, thanks to the same twin-power turbo technology as the 420i, is good for 62 miles an hour in 6.1 seconds, which makes it only fractionally slower than the 6-cylinder 306 brake horsepower 435i, and at a substantial saving. If I couldn't stretch to the flagship 431 brake horsepower 6-cylinder twin-turbo supercar slaying M4 model, then I think the 428 would be my variant of choice. Both the 6-cylinder diesel models come as standard with the impressive 8-speed ZF automatic gearbox I mentioned earlier, a transmission that's optional further down the range, and well worth considering, offered in either standard or paddle shift sport guises. Now, it now features BMW's proactive drive technology, which on vehicles fitted with satellite navigation is able to adapt your gear shift timings to suit your current driving situation. So it can anticipate things like bends and roundabouts, always ensuring that you're in exactly the right gear for fast and efficient progress. If we accept that one of the primary purchasing priorities for potential buyers of this car is going to be the way that it looks, then BMW seems very well set here. It appears at first glance to be larger than the two-door 4 Series Coupe model it's based upon. Indeed, you would have thought that a Gran Coupe would have to be to accommodate its 2 extra rear doors and larger boot. Apparently not. As it turns out, the extra versatility comes through changes to the shape of the roof. It's 112 millimetres longer and sits 12 millimetres higher. Otherwise, all of the other basic dimensions of this car, body length, width, wheelbase and so on, replicate not only the ordinary 4 Series Coupe, but also the 3 Series saloon it was originally derived from. Certainly the long bonnet, the short overhangs and the set-back passenger compartment are very familiar. As is the front end, another carryover from this model's conventional coupe stablemate, complete with typical BMW design features like the double kidney front grille, dual round headlights with Corona rings and the large air intake in the front apron. Moving back, you come across another familiar touch, these lovely boomerang-shaped air breathers behind each front wheel arch. Now, they do actually have a purpose, drag reduction, but I wouldn't really care if they didn't. A car of this kind needs styling trinketry. And a little of the kind of aesthetic flourish you'll appreciate as your eyes follow the gently stretched, extended roofline further back, where it flows across both rear doors and blends into the slightly raised and short rear section of the car. Now, this area may lack the kind of aggressive bottle rocket style rear haunches of the standard 4 Series Coupe, but it's still purposeful in shape and just the right side of brash. I particularly like these lovely wraparound rear light clusters that give the tail area a more sophisticated and cohesive look. They also mirror the frontal styling theme, namely lowering and widening the visual effect. After admiring the outside, particularly eye-catching if you paid the extra for M Sport trim, you might be expecting more from the interior than BMW has actually delivered. Yes, the way the look of the cabin flows right around the inside of the doors and into the rear seating area is a neat distinguishing touch, but otherwise you could be in pretty much any of the Munich Makers 3 or 4 Series models. That means a set of virtually faultless ergonomics, but also a cabin that can feel a little dull and plain unless you lift it with some of the more colourful trim treatments. At minimum, I'd want to specify the aluminium trim and anthracite headlining that I have here. But it all works so well, the main dials in particular being a model of clarity. I particularly like the easy access to the climate and stereo controls that doesn't require you having to root around in sub-menus on an infotainment touchscreen. Now, you don't get one of those here, and you don't need it, because BMW's iDrive system is now so effective, even if its screen isn't quite as well integrated into the dash layout as, say, you'll find with the Audi MMI setup. There's a lot on here. From maintenance schedules and visual handbook representations to the many varied and mainly optional functions that make up the Munich Makers connected drive system. And it's all very easy to find, particularly with the revised rotary controller that's part of the optional BMW professional setup that I'm using here. And in the rear, well, the process of getting in through these lovely frameless doors is a little inhibited by the wheel arches. You have to climb in and then fall back on the cushion. Once you're in place on the back seat, that stretched, heightened roofline delivers head and legroom that are both remarkably good for a car still professing to be a coupe. Though if you're expecting to carry 5 people and use all 3 rear belts provided, you might need a bit of a reality check. BMW describes this car as a 4+1 seater, which means that it's been designed for 4, but has a centre rear bench that can be used for a child or, in an emergency, by an adult. If you are beyond school age, you certainly won't want to be stuck here for any length of time, not only because this middle section is uncomfortable, but also because it's been raised to clear the centre transmission tunnel, so headroom is inevitably tight. Those in the sculpted outer seats, though, should have few complaints, even if they're 6-footers, provided they don't mind the way that their shoulders will be pushed forwards by the curve of the seat backs, angling them towards the centre console. Onto the boot. Now, I've called it that because BMW has gone to great lengths to make this look like a typical coupe boot, rather than the wide access tailgate it actually is. Now, I'm not sure precisely why, because provision of a 5th rear door is probably one of the key reasons that potential buyers will want to consider this car in the first place. In this case, the rear hatch comes as standard with electric assistance, and there's also the option of paying extra for sensors that'll open the thing remotely following a sweep of your foot beneath the rear bumper if you approach the car key in pocket, heavily laden with bags. The luggage bay, though shallow and accessible only over quite a high loading lip, is decently sized with 480 litres on offer. If you pay extra for the extended storage option I have here, you get a floor net to keep loose things in place, along with a side stowage net area, a strap to secure smaller items, multifunction luggage hooks, a 12-volt power socket and plug-in segments for a luggage compartment floor liner you could use to divide up the boot area. There's also underfloor storage. Overall, the space provided is 35 litres more than you'd get in a conventional 4 Series coupe and the same as you'd get in a 3 Series saloon. More importantly, it's also the same as you'd get in a rival Audi A5 Sportback and a little more than is available from a rival Mercedes CLA class. For a bit of extra BMW range perspective, I'll tell you that the brand's 3 Series Touring Estate offers 495 litres, while its 3 Series Gran Turismo 5-door hatch offers 510 litres. As with both those variants, you can quickly extend things here by folding the rear seat backs forward. Once you've removed the lower section of the two-part rear parcel shelf, you'll find that in standard models there's the usual 60-40 rear seat back split, but I'd want the optional 40-20-40 arrangement that I've got here that makes it easier to poke through longer items like skis without upsetting rear seat passengers. Now, if you do need all of the luggage space on offer, you'll find that though the cargo bay isn't quite flat, it can swallow up to 1,300 litres. That's 200 litres less than a 3 Series Touring Estate, 300 litres less than a 3 Series Gran Turismo hatch, but quite sufficient, I'd say, for the likely needs of most owners. It's certainly a big improvement on the much more restricted 980 litre cargo area that an Audi A5 Sportback provides. The Gran Coupe pricing proposition looks reasonably competitive. For a start, one of these won't cost you any more than the equivalent 4 Series Coupe two-door model, which seems very fair. So for mainstream variants, you're looking at a pricing span that lies primarily in the £30,000 to £40,000 bracket. Most customers will be browsing at the bottom of the range, where both the 420i and this 420d model put out around 190 brake horsepower. But if you choose this diesel version, there's a premium of nearly £2,500 to find over its petrol equivalent. Now, both these models also offer the option of xDrive four-wheel drive for a premium of around £1,500. You're also looking at around £1,500 more if you want to specify the 8-speed automatic transmission that many will want. To put 4 Series Gran Coupe pricing into perspective, I'll tell you that in buying this car, you'd be looking at having to fork out over £3,000 more than you would for a comparable 3 Series saloon with the same engine. If you were comparing this 4 against a more versatile equivalent 5-door 3 Series model, say the Touring Estate version or the Gran Turismo hatchback variant, then the difference would fall to somewhere between £500 and £1,500, depending on the version and the engine spec that you're looking at. In all these cases, bear in mind that much of the premium you'd have to pay for this Gran Coupe is covered by the fact that it comes more highly specified. So you don't have to pay extra for things like leather trim, seat heating and front parking sensors, as you would have to do on the directly comparable 3 Series models. Those kinds of extras would also cost you more on a rival Audi A5 Sportback, which explains why lower order 4 Series Gran Coupe variants are priced at around £2,500 above their most direct A5 Sportback equivalents. Well, that and the fact that by and large the Audi will offer you slightly less performance model for model. I still think though that the A5's a better match for this BMW than the two other models in this segment that describe themselves as coupes, yet offer a couple of rear doors, Mercedes CLA Class and Volkswagen CC. For a start, both of these are saloons, not hatchbacks, so lack this Gran Coupe's 5th door versatility. Then there's the fact that the CLA is far more cramped in the back and the Volkswagen is somewhat uninspiring to drive. Still, if none of that matters, then you might be interested to know that either a CLA or a CC could save you in the region of £2,000 to £3,000 over a comparable Gran Coupe if you're looking at a 4-cylinder diesel model, though that premium reduces considerably if you're looking at petrol power. All of which means that if you really want a car of this kind, you might very well end up really wanting a 4 Series Gran Coupe. In which case, you're going to want to know what your money will be buying you in terms of standard equipment. The answer is that the standard tally is actually reasonably comprehensive. So, as well as the iDrive infotainment system with its 6.5-inch colour screen, all variants get automatic xenon headlights with heated washers, front fog lights, smart alloy wheels of at least 17 inches in size, shod with run-flat tyres, heated door mirrors, an alarm, park distance control at the front and at the back, rain-sensing wipers, a powered tailgate and a hill start assistant to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. Inside, there's leather for both the heated seats and the steering wheel, dual zone air conditioning, cruise control, a trip computer, Bluetooth phone compatibility, and a decent quality 6-speaker stereo system with a digital radio with USB and aux in points. You also get the Drive Performance control setup that enables you to tweak steering and throttle response to your mood. Gear shift timings too if you pay extra for one of the 8-speed auto gearbox options. There are two, a standard version and a sport package, which adds steering wheel paddles and quicker shift ratios. Now, Drive Performance Control is a system that you can get more from by correctly specifying your car. To start with, upgrading your trim level to either a sport model or the kind of M Sport variant that I have here will get your Gran Coupe's DPC system fitted with an extra Sport Plus setting for when you really want to press on. And beyond this, well, if I had the cash, I'd also want to go a stage further and really complete the Drive Performance Control package by paying extra for the adaptive M Sport suspension setup that I've been trying here. Now, it works through the DPC's same Eco, Comfort, Sport and Sport Plus settings and allows you to tweak the ride to suit the road that you're on. This is a much better way to go than the only other optional suspension package BMW offers on this car. Lowered, stiffened M Sport suspension you've no control over for those times when you simply want a cosseting ride. And other key extras? Well, the optional variable sport steering package doesn't make a lot of difference, but it isn't a very pricey add-on. I might also be tempted by the head-up display that projects key driving information onto the bottom of the windscreen. Oh, and adaptive headlights, which dip themselves at night, turn with the corners, and can also be ordered in super bright LED form. But of course, you can go a lot further than that. The anthracite headlining and brushed aluminium trim options, they really lift the feel of the interior. And if I hadn't gone for this M Sport trim level, then I'd want some of the elements from it. Certainly the grippy sport seats and the chunky 3-spoke M steering wheel. Elsewhere on the extras list, there's the Comfort Access tailgate that you can open by merely waving your feet beneath the bumper, the extended storage luggage area package, a glass sunroof, the thumping Harman Kardon surround sound stereo package, and a park assist system that'll steer you into the tightest spaces. Don't go spending too much on items like these though until you've considered the merits of BMW's various connected drive media packages. Now, these include the latest BMW professional navigation system with its smarter iDrive touch controller, which can offer a pad for writing text or using a cursor on an interactive map. The navigation setup can also divert you around jams with real-time traffic information and BMW online services. There are also the latest infotainment features like full speech recognition and voice control with an optional message dictation function. Plus, there's web radio, access to social networking, and the Google Send to Car system, so you can plan your route beforehand on your PC, then remotely forward it to your car. You'll have access to various BMW apps too, including my favourite one, a free remote app that enables you to remotely lock or unlock your car if you lose your keys. Safety-wise, there are the usual twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus all kinds of electronic acronyms to hopefully ensure that you'll never have to use them. Switchable DSC dynamic stability control, of course, which when disconnected activates an electronic limited slip function for the rear differential to help through spirited cornering. Now, if that's all a bit too wild for you, then just settle back and leave the ASC automatic stability control and DTC dynamic traction control systems to take care of things. The ABS braking system is aided by DBC dynamic brake control and CBC cornering brake control. Plus, there's a brake drying function to ensure that even in the wet, the disc is optimally effective. There's a tyre puncture warning system and Isofix child seat fastenings too, but of course you can go a lot further than that. The driving assistant function uses a camera mounted in the rearview mirror to detect a possible collision, alerting the driver and automatically initiating braking if necessary. The same camera is used by an active cruise control system that not only constantly keeps you a safe distance behind the car in front, but also, if you come across a tailback, can even slow you to a stop and start you off again. Further optional camera-operated safety features include lane change and lane departure warning systems that'll warn you of a potential collision when changing lanes. If the worst should happen and the infotainment setup of your 4 Series has been fitted with BMW's emergency call system, the car will automatically summon help, alerting the emergency services to your exact GPS location. Could be a lifesaver. For all the talk of muscular styling, rewarding driving manners and clever tech, perhaps the most impressive thing about this 4 Series model is its cost effectiveness. Now, much of this is down to BMW's clever, efficient dynamics technology. The elements of this are copied by just about every other brand in this segment, but the way the Munich maker has put them all together really seems to have hit the efficiency sweet spot. Now, we're talking here of things like lightweight engineering, electric power steering, low rolling resistance tyres, brake energy regeneration, and an auto start-stop system to cut the engine when you don't need it, stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. But the driver must also play his or her part. So there's an optimum gear shift indicator on the dash and an Eco Pro mode that you can select in the Drive Performance Control System that'll focus all of the car's systems on ultimate frugality. Also playing their part in this model are the so-called air breathers and aero curtains, located respectively behind and ahead of the front wheel arches. They're to reduce turbulence and therefore drag in the area around the front wheels. And the results of all of this effort? Well, they're not quite enough to enable mainstream 4 Series Gran Coupe models to outshine the running cost returns of their direct Audi A5 Sportback and Mercedes CLA class rivals. But this BMW is able to get very close. Now, that's laudable when you consider that model for model, this Munich contender will offer you slightly more performance than its German competitors can serve up, even in entry-level 418D diesel guise, a version that manages almost Super Mini style figures, 61.4 miles to the gallon and 119 grams per kilometre of CO2. Here though, I've chosen a 420D variant, a model launched with an engine that could return 60.1 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle while emitting 124 grams per kilometre of CO2. Throw those figures in with other typical ownership stats and you'd be looking at, say, a sport-trimmed 420D Gran Coupe model costing you around 84 pence per mile to run over the usual 3-year, 36,000 mile ownership span. That's less than you'd pay to run a top-spec 2-litre diesel Ford Mondeo estate. Looking good, you see, needn't cost the earth. As with all derivatives of this BMW, the running cost figures actually marginally improve if you specify your car with the 8-speed automatic gearbox I've been trying here. This car's got that and an X-Drive 4-wheel drive package that seems to have commendably little impact on its running cost returns. That's in contrast to Audi's Quattro system, which tends to hit customers quite hard in the wallet region. I should also mention the 2 automatic-only 6-cylinder diesel Gran Coupe options. The 430D manages 55.4 miles to the gallon and 134 grams per kilometre, but the top 435D suffers a little more as it only comes with the X-Drive package, returning 50.4 miles to the gallon and 146 grams per kilometre. All very nice, but most buyers of this car will be lower mileage customers looking at the bottom end of the 4 Series Gran Coupe range. If you're one of these, don't automatically assume that this 420D is the optimum running cost choice. This diesel requires a £2,500 premium over the petrol 420i you might not quickly recoup, given that the petrol model manages up to 44.1 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and can put out as little as 149 grams per kilometre of CO2. As with all versions of this car, these stats can be affected by a surprising amount by the larger wheels fitted to plusher versions, so be aware of that. Bear in mind too that opting for the X-Drive four-wheel drive system has a greater impact on running costs on the 420i than it does on this 420d. Further up the petrol-powered 4 Series Gran Coupe range, the 245 brake horsepower 4-cylinder 428i variant is more efficient than its rapid performance would lead you to expect, with a combined cycle figure of 42.8 miles to the gallon and a CO2 return of 154 grams per kilometre. That would certainly make me think twice about buying the mainstream 6-cylinder petrol version of this car, the 435i, a model that'll get you on more familiar terms with the staff at your local filling station, returning as it does no more than 34.9 miles to the gallon and 189 grams per kilometre. What else? Well, there's a condition-based service indicator, and those maintenance costs can be kept in check with 2 optional servicing packages which cover you for servicing and maintenance for, well, either 5 years or 50,000 miles. As for insurance groupings, well, you're talking Group 23 for the 418D, Group 29 for the 420i and 420d variants, Group 34 for the 428i, Group 36 for the 435i, from Group 39 for the 430d, and Group 41 for the 435d. And finally, well, earlier I mentioned strong residuals. To be specific, expert predictions suggest that on a 420d variant like this one, you should get well over 40% of your purchase price back after 3 years, which means that this BMW could be worth up to £4,000 more than comparable rivals at that point. One great car can create many such models. Certainly there seems to be an almost never-ending series of ways that BMW can use the underpinnings of their segment-defining 3 Series saloon to suit ever-changing customer preferences. Here perhaps in this good-looking 4 Series Gran Coupe, we have the most appealing example yet of what this Munich maker can do in the compact executive segment. Not all cars that claim to be coupes are stylish enough to really deserve that title, particularly those that must also accommodate 2 rear passenger doors. This Gran Coupe, though, wears its badge credibly, yet still offers enough practicality to justify its existence. If you were thinking of a decently specified 3 Series saloon or touring estate, you ought to consider it. And if you were thinking of a 3 Series Gran Turismo hatch and didn't mind the slight price premium that you get back anyway at resale time, then I can't really see why you wouldn't buy this car instead. Indeed, I could see many potential buyers here thinking in much the same terms about the kind of 4 Series 2-door coupe model that would cost exactly the same as this car. After all, a Gran Coupe offers you more, and the downsides are few. This, though, is the kind of talk that illustrates BMW's primary problem with this model, namely the likelihood that many of its customers will be people who would have bought one of the company's products anyway. Yet it deserves to reach a much wider market than that, and at least go some way towards satisfying its maker's hopes of conquest business, primarily from segment arch-rivals Audi and their successful A5 Sportback. Against that car, this one is better looking, better to drive, and not really any more expensive once you've taken specification into account. A specification that certainly goes at least some of the way towards justifying the necessary price premium over an ordinary 3 Series. And is a key factor in creating what is, in short, a very competitive product indeed, assuming you can afford the required asking price. And overall, Well, if you're looking at a conventional compact executive model, you may well not already have a Gran Coupe on your wish list. If so, then perhaps it ought to be. After all, just for once, the kind of car you've dreamed about may also need to be the one that you really need to buy.